Hello everyone, in this video we are going to talk about variance or standard deviation. So we are working on IXL Algebra 1 KK.7 Variance and Standard Deviation. So let me first talk about what variance is, because standard deviation is obtained using variance. They are strongly related, and then explaining variance is easier and makes more sense for students. So before we start this, I'm going to explain the concept of variance. It tells us how variable our data set is. What that means, let's say you have let's say I have 15 students in my classroom, and let's talk about their ages. All of them are probably going to be the same age, right? Maybe some of them are going to be older than the others 1 year, or younger than the others 1 year, but the ages are going to be pretty close to each other. They're probably 15, 15, 15. Like if I have 15 students in class, 13 of them could be 15 years old, one of them could be 16, maybe one of them is 14 years old. So the ages are going to be pretty close. This is not variable. The data, looking at the ages, there is a consistency between the data that I have in my classroom, looking at the students' ages. So in that case, the variance of that group of students is going to be pretty close to 0, indicating that everything, all of the ages are pretty close to each other. That's what that means. If a variance is 0, that means all of the numbers in my data set are the same. Look at this example over here. The numbers are 9, 9, 1, 9, 8. So while 9, 9, 9, and 8 are pretty close, if I was just finding the variance of those four numbers, that would be close to 0. But now there's a 1 included, and there is a big difference between 1 and 9. So the variance is going to increase a little. It's going to get further away from 0. You cannot have a negative variance, by the way. It's always going to be positive. And the bigger your variance is, the more spread around your data is going to be. Say that you have a coordinate plane, you're going to put these numbers. If your variance is 100, those numbers are going to be across the place, okay, all over the place. So that's basically what variance is. It tells you how variable or how spread your data is. So there is going to be 3 or maybe 4 steps to find the variance. So let's get started. If you have a TI-84 graphing calculators, you can just make a list using these numbers and then hit some buttons. It tells you what the mean of your data set is, what the standard deviation is, what the variance is. It tells you pretty much anything about what you want to know about a group of numbers. If you have, let me see. There are different calculators, not graphing calculators, scientific calculators that does calculate the variance or standard deviation. But I'm assuming you're not going to use those, because if you do, you wouldn't be watching this video. Let's find the variance with this question. So step 1 is finding the mean, or in other terms, finding the average of your numbers. So for that, you can either use a Desmos kind of a calculator, or you can basically add all of the numbers you have. 1 plus 9 plus 8, and then divide it by, we have 5 numbers, divided by 5. So let me see, that's 10, 28, 36, divided by 5. This is going to be, let me see that, 7.2. So the mean of the data we have is 7.2. Now, what am I going to do with this? By the way, the mean is expressed with that sign. To me, that looks like an M. It's just like a fancy M. Many people think that it looks like a U. So whatever is easier for you. And then next, we subtract all of the numbers we have in our data set from the mean. Okay? Or subtract the mean, subtract the mean from all of those numbers. That's step 2. This one was step 1, find the mean or the average. Step 2, or the average. Step 2 is, I'm not going to write it because it's going to take a lot of space if I write it. Step 2 is subtract the mean from each of these numbers and square them. That's what you're going to do. Here, let's get started. 9 minus 7.2 and square it. Move on to your second number. 9 minus 7.2, square it. 1 minus 7.2, square it. 9 minus 7.2, squared. And then 8 minus 7.2, squared. And then you'll add them all together. Make sure you have the same number of parentheses as the number of numbers you have in your data set. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parentheses, and my data set has 5 numbers. So the answer to this is going to give me the variance. Let me pause the video and then type this all on Desmos. Okay, so I typed everything on Desmos. I also put the mean over here. Here's how you find the mean. I also wanted to double check that I got the work right, by the way, since I have a decimal. So you add all of the numbers and then divide it by the number of numbers you have in your data set. You got your mean. And then start from the first number you have, subtract the mean and square it. Plus, repeat this process for each number you have, and then you have your total. So this total is going to give us this variance. So we will take that total and divide it by the number of items, number of numbers we have in the data set. Originally, in the first line, look at the number of numbers we have. We have 5 of them. So that would be the variance of the data set that I had. 9.76 is the variance. I'll talk about that in a moment, but if you have a question about standard deviation, I didn't do this assignment in the past ever before, so I don't know if you're going to be asked to find the standard deviation, but I'm assuming you will be because of the title of the assignment. So in that case, what you'll need to do is you're going to find the square root of your answer, 9.76. If it says what's the standard deviation and variance, this is what you need to do. That's how you find the standard deviation. Without technology, without a graphing calculator, if you want to find the standard deviation, you need to find the variance at first. And then you'll square root that number. That's going to be your standard deviation, 3.12. Since the next number is 4, it is not 5 or higher than 5. We are not rounding it up to 3.13. It'll stay as 3.12. So if we get back over here, let me talk about what that sign tells you. This right here is in Latin called sigma. So that sign is called sigma. It's basically an O with like a tail. Just that sign represents the standard deviation without the square. When you put a square, that means this one here is standard deviation. Deviation. Standard deviation for population. I'll explain what that means, because these are the terms that no matter how much the teachers explain it in class, students overlook them and then don't realize that there's a difference between them until they're focused watching a video or getting a tutoring from a tutor. Other than that, usually students don't even realize that there's a difference between them. So that's standard deviation. If you put a square over here, that's called the variance, which tells us how variable our data is. Variance of the population. Now, two more letters or symbols that are not going to look weird as these two, S squared and S. S squared is variance of a sample. Like, remember the example that I talked about, my classroom having like 15 students, their ages and how variable that data is? Since it's not the world's population, it's not like millions of people or billions of people in that case, that was just a small sample. If I'm talking about a sample, then the sign, this is the symbol that I want to use for the variance is S squared versus sigma squared. And there is a difference between them. The formulas of each other is different, so make sure that you know the difference. When you see the letter S, that belongs to a sample. If you're dealing with sigma, that weird symbol, all with the tail kind of thing, then you're talking about a population. And this one here, just letter S, is standard deviation of a sample. Again, if it's a letter, you're dealing with the sample. If it's a sign, that symbol, you're dealing with the population. Basically, these are the steps. Find the mean, step 1. Step 2, subtract the mean from each of your numbers and square them. And step 3, add them all together. Divide it by the number of numbers you have in your data set to find the variance. If you need to find the standard deviation, you will square root that number. That's just one more step. Okay, let's move on to another question. Now we know what variance means. Okay, this right here, 91193. The other, we still have 91998. Instead of 9 and 8, we have 1 and 3. Let's see how that's going to change the variance. Let's see if it's going to be bigger or smaller than 9.76. So I will pause the video and do the processing here. Okay, before completing everything, I just want to show you a shortcut. Here's what you can do. Instead of just typing everything in here, you can just put one of your parentheses and then put a plus. Control A is going to copy, and Control A is going to select everything you have, and Control C is going to copy what you have. And then what you can do, I have 5 numbers up here, right? I need 5 sets of parentheses. I already have 1 of them. I need 4 more. And then hit Control V to paste what you just copied. Control V for once, twice, 3 times, and 4. Now I have 5. There was a plus in the end. I just deleted that one. Now I have all 5 expressions in here, but I need to change the numbers. My numbers are, I'm going left, 911. So this one is going to be 1. And then that's 1. The next 2 numbers are going to be 9 and 3. I'm changing the first numbers. This is 9. I'm not changing it. This is going to turn into F3. So that's the total. And then I need to divide this number by 5 because I had 5 numbers in my data set. So this is my variance. If I need to find the standard deviation, this is what I do. 13.14, and then you'll square root that number. 3.67, because this number is 5 or higher than 5, I need to round that one up. So 3.67 is the standard deviation. 13.44 is the variance. Oh, we don't need the variance, we need the standard deviation. So let's just put it up. 3.67. Okay, let's read the instructions. I just realized that it says round it to the nearest 10th. So we get back here. If we round it to the nearest 10th, we will have one number after the decimal point. So our answer is either 3.6 or 3.7. The next digit is going to tell us what to do. The next digit is 6. It's higher than 5. We round that 6 to 7. So 3.7 would be our standard deviation. Oh, this was interesting. I just did 2 questions and then I'm at 82. So that means, and it says I did 1 question. How is that even possible? Okay, but there's no other kind of a question. That's basically what you do. You find, for this assignment, you find the mean, the average of the numbers you have. Step 2 is subtract the mean from each of your numbers and then square them. Let me just put Desmos over here to explain it better. And then square them, add them all together. Next step is going to be divided by the number of numbers you have. In this case, we have 7 numbers. We are going to divide it by 7. And then that's going to give us the variance. If your question is about standard deviation, you can just square root that number and then end up with your answer. Pay attention to how you will round your answer, because that's going to make a difference on this assignment. So that's all for this video. Make sure to take notes or screenshots in that case if you're using a desktop or a laptop. And then use the steps to solve your questions. This right here, that screen, would help you a lot. It shows everything step by step. So all you have to do is replacing these numbers with your numbers. Thanks for watching. That's all for me for this assignment, guys. Let me know if you have any questions, and comment below if the video helped you out or if you have any suggestions. I will see you in another video.